Can I get a thumbs up? Can folks see the slides all right? Cool. So let me just get the waiting room at Cayenne. There we go. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about strengths and what are your strengths? How can you use your strengths? And before we dive into all that, I want to do a quick recap of the semester, go over final deliverables, see if anybody has any questions about the reading assignments and book reports. We'll go over some of the strength results, and grateful that almost everybody was able to get their results into the spreadsheet this afternoon. And then we got a few activities today. We're going to do one as a big group, and then we're going to do a couple of breakouts as well to apply your strengths. And so I'm actually going to stop sharing to do the quick semester recap. And if folks do have questions at any point, let me know. You know, prior to spring break, we started the semester looking at idea generation and trying to get you to flex those idea muscles. I've been super impressed with all of the ideas you've been putting into the spreadsheet each week. It's really cool to see how creative the ideas are, and hopefully you found that as you stretch that muscle, it gets stronger and stronger, and it's not as awkward or challenging coming up with ideas as it was at the beginning of the semester. We then went through the business model canvas, which is your best friend anytime you want to take an idea and begin building out a plan to actually implement it. And then we got you out of the building, hypothetically speaking, to do customer discovery and understand if the people, the pain points you wanted to solve, there was actually a need there. After that, we talked about habits and how to pitch. There were some sales trainings. I think the pitch practice was a really great class and something I saw a lot of improvement. And congrats, by the way, to everybody for participating in the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge. I know several of you said that's not something you normally would have done if not for this class. So I'm glad to have gotten you some experience and exposure to what it's like to pitch and present and develop some of those skills. And then right before spring break, we had the Ikigai video thinking about, you know, what are you good at? What does the world need? What are people willing to pay you for? And my hope is that that also helps you think about career paths well after your time at Georgetown and, you know, what you want to do, hopefully with the strengths that we're going to talk about tonight. And just to wrap up, next week we'll have a lecture on social entrepreneurship math. I'm going to go through some finance related to running a business. And then the week after that, we'll have a panel discussion with 3 entrepreneurs who will share their social entrepreneurship journey. And the last week, May 6th, that's another asynchronous class. And I'm actually just going to have you watch a lecture. It's called The Last Lecture by one of my role models, a computer science professor, Randy Pausch, who actually passed away from cancer several years ago. And it was kind of his last lecture. And I think you're going to love it. I will leave it at that. And then in terms of final assignments for the semester, everybody should hopefully be well on their way through both reading a book as well as listening to an audiobook or a podcast series. And then your book reports are due by May 6th. And I will drop a link here in the chat for where to book report links for a 5-minute video and a few pages book summary of what did you learn. And I would also encourage you, when you want to take a break from studying, to check out some of the reports that other people submit, because it helps you not have to read 25 different books on a variety of topics, but get some insights and learnings there. Anybody have any questions about the final assignments as we're heading towards the end of the semester? Yeah, Jacob?
For the book report, is that going to be on just one, or is that on the audiobook and the book that we're
just one. So you can pick between the two.
Thank you.
And you can do them both on the same one, or you could do one for the book and one for the audiobook. It's really up to you. Any other questions about assignments before we dive into strengths? Awesome. Let me share my screen again. So this is a friendly reminder of 10 things that require absolutely zero talent. And that includes being on time, having a positive attitude, using good body language, being coachable, being prepared, and ultimately having a strong work ethic. So we're going to take a look at everybody's strength results here. And I'm going to leave this up for a couple of minutes and want to open it up for discussion with you all. If folks wouldn't mind sharing something they learned about themselves, something they thought was interesting about their results from the strengths assessment. Did anybody find a strength that they definitely knew there was a strength, or an unexpected one that they didn't really think was a strength, but in going through the report saw how it could be a strength? Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I think so mine aren't up there, but I think they're in the file. I don't know, maybe I put them in a little bit late. But my second one was input, and I think that was like very interesting to see because like I never really thought about relationships as like something that people can collect per se. And I don't like necessarily love the notion of like commodifying relationships per se, but I do think it's interesting to think about like that idea.
Nice.
I think that's like, yeah, useful insight.
Rohan?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this. I think first off, like the test did a great job of making some of those subconscious identities off us and bringing them out, or shining a light at them in an explicit fashion, just really help enunciating, some of our strengths and like how they define us and some of their nuances and how that kind of ripples into daily interactions and who we are. So just seeing it like laid out very explicitly was very helpful. In terms of like one specific strength that I was kind of was curious by was more so one of them was achiever, and I viewed it less as a strength but almost like as a weakness, whereby it's something that I want to work on, where it's less so about me but more so about the team. And the way how the test kind of portrayed it, it was more so kind of casting it in not so positive light. So it kind of helped me identify a trait that might be something that defines, or that not speaks to me but defines me, but it's something that I want to change. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Thea, and then Jacob.
Yeah, so I thought this assignment was like super cool. Like Alex, I was a little bit confused when I got input too, and it took me like a couple of read-throughs through a bunch of documents, and I was like, okay, I agree with some of this stuff. But what I was going to say was, I don't know why I started looking for the pattern between like my qualities and saying, okay, I'm good at these things, but maybe I'm missing these things. That's what I can improve on in the future. So that was useful too, like just seeing like the absence of some information.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. And Jacob, how about you?
Yeah, this kind of connects with what Rohan was saying. I think for like a lot of the different strengths, there were things that I saw that I was like, oh yeah, that's a great thing. And then some things that I was like, oh, maybe I wouldn't want to be associated with that, which I thought it was interesting to see the question that you posed in the document, which was like, which of these would you want others to think about you? Which kind of shows like how we want, I don't know, like all of us have parts of our strengths that maybe we want others to see, and other things that we consider less of a strength, even if it is under what would be considered a strength. So it's kind of interesting going off like how we work on building maybe how others view us, or how we want to portray ourselves to others, and maybe playing into the sides of these strengths that we enjoy a little more, or we want to be viewed as. I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it.
Awesome. Jorge, and then Kai.
Yeah, so I kind of echoing what Jacob said, I kind of noticed that there, a lot of them was very positive, but I guess in some situations, it wouldn't be as positive. So like, for instance, I got competition, and I thought, it's really great to kind of like push yourself to be the best possible, but, it doesn't necessarily work in a team setting to kind of be like competing with your team members, or kind of like keeping that mindset. So I thought it was really interesting to kind of see it both as like a strength and also kind of a weakness, or something to address later on, and kind of keep that in your mindset.
To kind of go off that idea of it being both a strength and a weakness, my first strength was woo, which is winning over others. I'd never heard of that. and made me think about how in different kind of settings, whether that be like workplace, school or whatnot, but especially with COVID, how I have had to kind of like explore other parts of my identity because I can't really be around people like that. But it definitely made me think about like being back in person, what that will look like, and how I can tap into other strengths, because that can be both a pro and a con to have as probably my top strengths.
Totally. And I will share, woo is one of my strengths as well. And I think it's a pretty fun one. Like when I meet new people, it's like a game to get them to like me. And, you know, I had a doctor's appointment yesterday and I'm checking in and I go, and I wanted like the front desk lady to like me. I was like, oh, can I tell you a joke? Like, check this out. I was like, all right, so you know how the Black Eyed Peas can sing us great songs? Unfortunately, the chickpeas can only hum us great songs. And I got all three ladies just like busting up laughing. And I was like, great. Like I haven't even been to the doctor yet. And this is, you know, a fun interaction. So just looking for ways to, you know, leverage those strengths and realize in different situations, hey, this is an opportunity for me to, you know, really focus on this specific strength. Makes a lot of sense. So we are going to go into a writing activity now. So folks could get out a pen and a piece of paper. And I'll give everybody like 30 seconds to get this ready. And as you're doing it, so I also want to ask if everybody, if you wouldn't mind just like unmuting while we do this. It's going to be a written exercise, but if you have any reactions or things you want to share, we're going to see how people react to it. And so it's an exercise based on individual productivity. And so you're going to be measured on the speed and the quality. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to need to write this statement on the left side of the paper 5 times. And don't start yet because we're going to time it. And then I want you to say done, you know, when you're done. You're going to write, I use my strengths every day, exclamation point. All right, let me get my stopwatch out before we start this. And again, you're going to write this phrase 5 times. And so you got your pen and your paper. Great. All right, now before you start, take your pen and put it in your non-dominant hand. You're going to write with your other hand and go. All right, we're at 35 seconds. We're just writing the 5 sentences pretty quickly here. Let me know when you're done. Anybody want to share how this feels while you're doing this? What's going on? Why is this taking so long to write these short sentences?
Done.
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 Nicholas, how'd that feel?
Not great.
Done.
How about anybody else? How did that feel writing those sentences out?
Pretty uncomfortable.
Frustrating.
It was kind of fun because like halfway through, like a sentence through, I was like, oh, if you switch to cursive, like you can go a lot faster because you don't have to like pick up the pen.
All right, so now real quick, we're going to do the same exercise again. On the right side of the paper, you can write, I use my strengths every day with your dominant hand. And so ready, set, go. And give me a done when you're able to get all 5 sentences down.
Done.
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 All right, so second time around, we got folks coming about 40, 45 seconds. The first one was about 2.5 minutes. So just think about the time difference there between using your strong hand and focusing on your strengths versus trying to get things done without leveraging your strengths. What did it feel like the second time? How did it feel to write with your dominant hand? Yeah, Liam, go for it. We can just unmute. Let's make this.
Yeah, both in combination, it kind of felt like it reminded me of language learning actually, because I feel like once you start to get like the basics down of a language, you're frustrated when you can't express something as like fluently as you would in a language you're comfortable in. So it's sort of like that where it's like it was more frustrating writing with the left hand because you could, or with the non-dominant hand because I could write with my dominant hand. So it's not being able to do the same things that you could otherwise do.
Nice. Who else wants to share something they noticed between the first time they wrote it and the second time they wrote it? Dexter, how about you?
Oh, I don't know. Well, yeah, it took a lot more time, but also like my left hand was kind of cramping up because I'm not used to using it like in that specific way. So
Yeah. And Chloe, how about you?
It kind of makes me appreciate my handwriting more. Like looking at comparing them to each other, like it makes me think I'm actually better at writing than I thought I was.
Nice. And Andres, how about you? I'm curious, what were you thinking? What was going through your head the first time versus the second time?
Oh, yeah. Normally I have like very poor handwriting, so that with my dominant hand. So when I was doing it with my left hand, I thought this is incomprehensible. But comparatively, like going back to my right hand, it felt so smooth to like be able to like write legibly.
Yeah. And Maya, I'm curious, when you did it the second time, were you able to think about other things? Did you not have to focus as much on the task at hand when you were doing it with your dominant strong hand?
Yeah, I don't know if I was thinking about other things, but I definitely felt more confident that I could finish first, which is maybe my trait was competition. So there you go.
Nice. All right, so hopefully everybody has realized that this is a great analogy for whether or not you're applying your strengths and whether you're trying to do things with your strengths or you're trying to do things with some things you're a little bit weaker in. Now, imagine what happens when you have a whole team of people who are not using their top talents. They're all writing with their offhand. It can lead to a huge type of disengagement that's contagious, decreases productivity. And having one person use their strengths is great, but when you work on a team and you can get everybody to be self-aware of what their strengths are and find ways that they can apply them to the projects that need to be done, whether in school or in your professional career, it can create a pretty big positive impact. And so I'm going to share my screen again before we go into breakout rooms. So we're going to have 4 rooms with like 4 or 5 folks in each room. You're going to have an 8-minute open conversation. So everybody come off mute. I want everybody to be participating. I'll pop in, for a minute or 2 to each of the rooms to check on you. And then we're going to have somebody from each group report out to the group what they discussed, what was one of the key themes that they identified. And so here are the questions for the first breakout activity. How do your strengths impact communication, set direction and make decisions, and overcome obstacles? And I'm going to paste this in the chat so that you have it as a reference when you get into the breakout rooms. Give me 1 second. Does anybody have any questions about what the expectation is for this 8-minute breakout room? Oh, and actually so you have it for reference. I'm also going to put the strengths link in here. So that way you can look up other people's strengths as you're talking and we'll know, oh, hey, we have a similar strength. There we go. Any questions before I open up the breakout rooms? Cool. All right, so welcome back from that breakout room activity. We want to take about 5 minutes now and just hear from each of the rooms. Any interesting insights or thoughts or questions or commonalities that came up in your discussion to share with the group. Maya?
In terms of the communication, we all kind of went through our strengths and found different qualities that helped us relate to other people and like articulate well to other people. So one of our group members had like empathy. I had like individualizations, like understanding where people are coming from. And so kind of went through and talked about how a big part of communicating is also being able to get through to someone. And so what parts of our strengths allowed us to do that? What parts of our strengths allowed us to like communicate our own like feelings as well. So that was I feel like a big takeaway from our meeting.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. Nicholas, how about you?
Yeah, I think that a lot of us sort of spent time reflecting on our own experiences and kind of how the strengths, I guess, make sense and sort of understanding ourselves better. So I know Avery mentioned, her experience as a personal trainer and her strength, and Bushra mentioned futuristic trait and how she likes to set direction. So I think I think the overall takeaway was it's easy to sort of think more about kind of who we are and sort of where we'll sort of carry ourselves moving forward.
Awesome. Alex, how about you? How was group 1?
I enjoyed our conversation. I think like one thing that's kind of small that came up often was, or that I thought like I felt, but like I guess it was more of a group sentiment, was that for me, like a lot of the questions weren't like necessarily opposites of each other. So like we'd be like, which way do you feel? Like which way do you feel? And I'd be like, those don't like seem like they're the opposite end of the spectrum in my opinion. But maybe that was like an intentional thing. I mean, I don't really have a psychological background, so I have no knowledge as to why that was the way it was, but I would have to put neutral because I'm like, I don't disagree or agree with any of these because I don't see them as opposites.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of different ways to interpret, and one of the big goals for this assignment is just creating the self-awareness for all of you to know what these strengths are, and then start to see ways in your life that they come up, either where you're applying them or perhaps not applying them, and realize, hey, this would be a lot easier if I thought about how to do it this way. Thea, how about you? How was the conversation with your group?
It was cool because there were like a bunch of different perspectives, and we talked about what I guess Alex's group touched upon, like how the test was sometimes confusing because it wasn't necessarily a spectrum. It was sometimes 2 ideas, but I don't know, it made it fun. Especially like when it's timed. I guess like for the people with like competition, it would be especially fun for them. It can be like a game almost. But we were talking about like the strengths and limitations of the strengths test. And someone in our group, I think Abby, is taking a psych class, so she like had a little more background than the rest of us on like the actual principles about like the strengths and weaknesses of personality tests like this. And it was cool because every single person had like a different use. Some of us were really like the test was super useful and helpful and could be used moving forward, and then like for others it just kind of confirmed things they already knew. Yeah.
Awesome. So we are going to do a strengths breakout activity number 2. And I just dropped in the chat some questions Shuffled up the groups. We're going to have 5 rooms with 4 folks in each room, thinking about how can your strengths help you build and maintain relationships. I think a few folks have already thought a little bit about that, especially with communication or woo. And then how can you use your strengths to work better in future jobs? I do want you to think about either internships you've had or you want to have, or even what does that career path look like 10, 20, 30 years from now, and how these things might help. And then last but not least, if you've got time, how can you use your strengths to recognize and celebrate others as a leader, as somebody who can build people up and strengthen teams? Any questions before we open up the breakout rooms? All right, here we go. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed that breakout chat. Would love a couple volunteers, one from each room, just to share some insights or thoughts or revelations that you had as you were talking through these questions. Avery, I'll let you kick it off.
So our group talked a lot about the first question. So how can your strengths help build and maintain relationships? So we talked about kind of a couple of traits that of each of ours that almost helped and hindered these relationships. So some of the ones that helped we thought were kind of empathy. So putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and then harmony, kind of agreeing with others. And then we talked about how some of our traits like competition and significance might sometimes kind of hinder building or maintaining relationships. Just in, like, I know personally one of mine was significance, and so like one of the, sorry for all the background noise, one of the like aspects of this one was surrounding yourself with conscientious individuals who are driven to do important work. So that could help build good relationships, but it could also kind of limit these relationships. So we just focused a lot on the first question, kind of both sides of building and maintaining relationships.
Nice. Rohan, can I get you to share some from your group, and then Kai from your group after that?
Yeah, absolutely. With our group, it was a pretty diverse mix of strengths. I think one commonality was futuristic and achievement. And I think, it spoke to several elements for the last 2 questions, which is about, strengthening the work, future jobs, and recognizing success. Achievement is not like a singular action. It's, it's a team effort, and ensuring that you have a strong team and you're maintaining open lines of communication and ensuring that every success or every team member is involved in that process to achieve that end goal is mutually beneficial to the job, as well as celebrating the success of others. So it's like a win-win perspective, adopting that achievement mentality, because you need the entire team to be there, and that it's beneficial for your firm, it's beneficial for your colleagues, it's beneficial for yourself. So that's one element that we discussed. But at the same time, it shouldn't be something that dominates your life achievement from a career perspective. You also need to ensure that you're taking time for self-care and things of that matter.
Great. Kai, how about your group?
Yeah, we talked a lot about how, first, with the question of how can your strengths help build and maintain relationships, how either they apply or we can work kind of more like individual or like inward based, I guess, traits to apply with like team building or communication skills. One example was the ideation trait. So it's like, how can you apply that to working with others, even though you create your own ideas, but still making sure that you're like a part of a team and building healthy relationships. And then we also talked about just like our personal kind of backgrounds and upbringing and how that shaped our traits, and then considering how that how they can be looked at, both pros and cons when it comes to the workforce and kind of the setting that you're in. So for example, Georgetown and growing up as a student in theater or with a big family or things like that, they might require different skills. But just thinking about how you can be adaptable, but also authentic when you show up in different spaces as being important.
Love it. Thanks for sharing. And Dexter, how about we wrap it up with you and your group?
Yeah, sure. So we talked a little bit about all 3. One major theme with the first and the third questions was just that we thought the process itself of like answering these questions and just thinking about it is useful for the topic of maintaining relationships or just recognizing others and celebrating success, because by answering some of these questions, we just kind of engage in the topic of strengths, and we can like therefore like possibly see other people's strengths better. And that like that works for obvious reasons in relationships, where in some ways something we really value might not be what someone else values, and we have to kind of detach from ourselves and realize that and then proceed forward. So we talked about some of that. I know Jacob also talked about at the end how it was interesting that in some of the personal like report sections of the report we got, some of the things were so specific that it was kind of like weird or surreal that like they thought of that and saw that in our answer.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And there are definitely, some of these things you read through, you'd be like, holy crap, that is me. Like I always do that. Why, I didn't know that I could answer random questions and people would know that I had this thing going on. And so thanks everybody for your time and attention today, going through the breakout room activities. I'm hoping you enjoyed the handwriting exercise as well. And next time you find yourself trying to do something that is one of your weaknesses, think about, hey, maybe this is somebody else's strength. Could they help me with it? Or how could I approach this problem, with your strengths in mind? I think most folks have uploaded a Google Doc to the Drive folder with their results and reflection questions and everything. I'm going to go in and grade them tomorrow. So if you haven't done it yet, please do it by the end of the night tonight. If you have any questions about what to do, just send me an email. We can get it on there in a Google Doc or a Word doc to go over it. And that wraps up class tonight. I will see you. Nicholas, you got a question real quick?
Yeah, sorry. Is there a rubric for the book reports and presentation?
No, there isn't. And I will, at a high level, make it engaging. I'm going to watch all these videos, so I don't want to fall asleep halfway through it. If you want to put some visuals or like Google Images, something to go along with it, so it's not just you talking at it, that's great. But again, think about maybe some of the lessons and how to pitch and present from earlier in the semester. And to simplify it, maybe think about what are 3 key takeaways that you want the audience to take away from it in the essay. Make that your thesis statement. You got 3 things, to dig into them a little bit, use an example, call out a favorite quote or 2, relate it to other things in the world. And ideally, I want to learn something in each of these book reports because I haven't read most of these books. So that's what we're looking for. How can you synthesize the learnings you've had and then share them with somebody else, because that often deepens your learning and understanding. Cool. All right. Well, take care, class. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next Thursday here at 5.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.